Can you hurt yourself by having more oxygen?
The reason why the doctor are providing those LPM is because that's what the patient is needing.
What do you do in regards to oxygen contents at the 5-year mark? Hey there, welcome to the Offsite Team podcast where we talk about all things DME. Today, we're going to be talking about how do you bill for oxygen contents, maintenance, and what happens at the 5-year mark. Because if you don't know what you're doing, you are leaving money on the table, and nothing is worse than giving money back to insurance companies for items that, we did the work for, we should get paid for. So we don't want to do that. So anyway, how are you today, April?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So this has been one of those things like, what do you do in regards to oxygen contents at the 5-year mark or maintenance? We all know patient goes home with oxygen. Almost all insurances will cover home oxygen for 3 straight years or 36 months. There are a few exceptions, some really small plans, but what happens with Medicare is they're going to pay for 36 months of oxygen. But what happens between month 36 and 5 years, it's kind of this thing that's out there. Providers need to still be servicing the equipment as well as billing for contents. So let's kind of start. What should providers know about the 36-month mark in regards to home oxygen?
So, for 36 months onwards, we need to make sure that we're still doing the maintenance and services. So for tanks, we need to make sure that we are refilling them, but we can also bill the insurance for the content of the tanks. We can bill
Absolutely.
that after the 36
And that's
months.
what HIC-PIC code or procedure code E0424, correct?
Oh, it's now E0443.
Oh, E0443. Excuse me. That's so a couple of years ago. I mean, I need to get up to you get to the last time I built it. But this is a great thing. The Offsite Team, this is what you guys do. You guys for us are making sure that not only are we billing for these services for our company, but in addition to that, you're taking care of all the work, making sure the customer is taken care of ahead of time. So we're not just billing and ignoring them. No, we are actually still doing home visits. We're still exchanging the contents, still giving them tanks. And so in order to bill for the oxygen contents, what do you have to have in a patient file or in the file typically? Let's go off Medicare criteria.
Right. Well, basically, we need to make sure that we have a delivery ticket on record. That's the number one requirement. We cannot bill both the concentrator. We can only bill the contents after the 36 months mark. And we need to have a prescription on file, of course, but the maintenance and services.
Now, for that prescription, I'm going to act dumb. So is the original prescription good, or do we need to get a new prescription every single year?
We need to make sure that we have a recertification for the prescription. So we have this so-called revise, and we also have another thing that's called recert. So after a year, once the prescription is no longer valid, we request for recertification from the physician who ordered the oxygen for the patient.
Yeah, and that's good because you really need to also have that in the patient file, because oxygen, it's actually not it's a drug is really what it is, which is why unlike let's say a wheelchair, you can buy a wheelchair privately without a prescription. You cannot buy oxygen without a prescription.
Correct.
It's a drug regulated by the FDA, so therefore you cannot just say, hey, my doctor said, or I need oxygen. No, you have to have a prescription to bill for oxygen.
That is correct. And even if they wanted to change the LPM or liters per minute for the oxygen, we want to make sure that there is a prescription on file prescribed by the doctor. If they want to go higher or lower, they cannot just change it, although they have the ability since they have the concentrator at home.
You can play around with the dial.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna play dumb. I know the answer to this question, but let's just say someone listening to the podcast might not know the answer. Well, if 2 really helps someone, why not go up to 4? What's the problem? I mean, can you hurt yourself by having more oxygen?
Well, it's
Do you know
actually
the answer to this question?
I'm not sure if I can answer it correctly, but for me, I wouldn't really suggest because there's different the reason why the doctor providing those LPM is because that's what the patient is needing. So we want to make sure that we are following that. Now chances are if you put it on a high liter flow, it might help you, but at the same time, I don't know if there's like drowning feeling when you put
So
it.
you went where I wanted you to go. So this is where talking with our respiratory therapist at Howard's Medical, but it usually extra oxygen is not going to hurt someone. Always listening to your doctor. So what you said, always listen to your doctor, that is correct. However, if someone has a condition, this is what my respiratory therapist has told us, let's say they're what's called a CO2 retainer. So that as they breathe in oxygen, they cannot get all the CO2 out of their lungs. If that is one of their conditions, you can actually kill someone by having too much oxygen. So it's one of those things. What you said is correct, but it's also helpful to know on the back end, if someone says, can I turn up my oxygen? No, you call your doctor.
Correct.
Or at least talk to the respiratory therapist who then would coordinate with the doctor, because the respiratory therapist, most people, yes, you can turn it up, but if you have one of those conditions, it can be fatal if you turn it up, because literally what then happens if you put too much oxygen into the lungs, you cannot get the CO2 out and you kill someone. So it's literally can be an issue of life or death, and this is why don't listen to April, don't listen to me, talk to your doctor, talk to your respiratory therapist. So, but going back to, you always want to keep the doctor in the loop. And this is also why on some of our higher end patients, where there are lots of underlying conditions, we like to get the respiratory therapist ideally out into the home, but if not, at least doing phone or video consults with the patient. And then they loop the doctor into the play, because this is why they're a respiratory therapist. And I'm just, a podcast host, for example. So, I mean, usually the first 36 months, they're really, really easy. Someone goes on to oxygen and then they're going to keep it. In my experience with our oxygen patients, what we tend to notice is there's kind of three buckets. There's the patient that's going to go on to oxygen, and let's be honest, in 6 to 12 months, they're going to pass away. They have a cancer diagnosis or something like that. So they're not going to be our long-term customers. We're still going to take really good care of them. Then there's going to be those people who need oxygen for more of a, I'd say 2, 3, 6 months, and then they're going to return it. Typically, the patients that we're talking on who are on oxygen long-term would be, let's say, COPD patients, emphysema patients. We are seeing less and less of emphysema.
CHF.
There's been some, chronic heart failure patients, CHF, absolutely. And it's those patients that, they very easily can turn into a very, very long-term or lifelong home oxygen patients. So what are we doing? And, the DME respiratory companies listening to us between months 36 and 60, those last 2 years, do we just put them on hold, ignore them until they're ready for a new concentrator? What do we do? Do we ignore them? Or
No,
what do we do?
definitely not. So what we like about our team, our offsite team, is we have this check with the concentrator and then the tanks as well. So what we do, we call the patient, our offsite team member calls the patient, making sure that everything is in order, if they need a refill, if they need to have someone to be at home to check their concentrator. So we do that. We have this thing that's called service call. Our offsite team is the one who's dedicated.
You would see that in Brightree and the service call thing. We're going to give them a call and say, hey, how are you doing? What else?
And then after that one, we need to make sure that we are also providing them the contents for the tank. If they need a refill, we can definitely do that. There are also instances where there is a power outage in the area. So what they do is they're going to ask for an extra ones, or offsite team members are also handling that.
Absolutely. Now, billing for oxygen content, no medical supply is going to make a lot of money between months, 36 and 60. So, however, what I will say, it's enough to at least, it's well worth the time to check in with the patients. And so any of our clients, one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about is what's called the sales funnel. So just because you might get oxygen, having a concentrator at someone's house is a wonderful opportunity to check in with them every 6 months or even 3 months, because we can call and say, hey, Anything else you're struggling with? Oh yeah, my wheelchair's not working, or this person had a fall. It is an opportunity, I'll just flat out say, to cross-sell. And the Offsite team that makes most of these phone calls for us, they're very, very skilled at talking with the customer. So it's one of those things, not only do companies make money billing for the contents, it's an opportunity to sell and market for complementary services, because the number of times that oxygen patients, the person's probably high likelihood, if they're not already on PAP or BiPAP, they're heading in that direction.
Right.
Eventually, especially if they're aging, their future wheelchair customers. There are a number of things that we can cross-sell at the time. And I don't want to say, hey, we're calling to sell them a hospital bed, but you're asking, hey, how are you doing? Oh, so-and-so just got out of the hospital. They're having a really hard time getting in and out of their bed. The doctor did talk about having a hospital bed. What an opportunity for the Offsite team members to talk to them. Well, yes, you know what? Would you like us to start working on the paperwork process to get a hospital bed covered by Medicare or Medicaid or whatever third-party plan that you have? So typically when we're doing this with our customers, with our Offsite team, what are other questions that we should ask, or we should tell our other companies listening to us, what really, really helps?
Well, it helps in building connection. I think what I like to put in is not just connection, but a collaboration. So collaborating with patients, with family, especially those with O2. As you've mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities as well in line with that. So not just we taking care of them, but at the same time, they're also taking care of us. They're helping us in getting the documentations that we need. So we provide them the medical equipments that they need. So
exactly. Now, what happens? So eventually, 5 years seems like a long time. It
Right.
always sneaks up on you. It's like my birthday every year. Oh man, I'm going to be 47 years old this year. But it sneaks up on me every single year. I noticed that 5 years really, it goes from like, oh, we're only getting paid for contents, to all of a sudden, hey, so-and-so qualifies for a new oxygen concentrator. Now, the advantage of working with the Offsite team is they know they're not waiting until year 5. They're starting the process 6 months ahead of schedule, because you have to have a face-to-face with the doctor and get everything all set up to bill to get that new oxygen concentrator at
Correct.
5 years. Don't wait until 5 years and then start going after, because you might be at 5 years 2 months, 5 years 3 months.
Right.
Granted, they still get to keep using the concentrator, but that's 3 months of whatever you get paid for oxygen, whether it be something as little as $70 on up to $140, depending on, are you rural, non-rural, private. But that's money that you want to work on it way ahead of time, so you can then start the process over again. So what should other people listening to us be thinking about when they get closer to that 5-year mark?
Well, we need to make sure that we have a new prescription on file, so we cannot just, although we all know that oxygens are continuous rental, it cannot be billed as a purchase. So we need to make sure that the patients know, which is why we're calling ahead of time, because they need to make an appointment. We have to have a new prescription on file, chart notes. We can use the old testing. If they don't want to do another testing, we can still bill Medicare for that or other insurance. But yes, basically we need to touch base with them before. And I have to agree with you in that way. There's no gap when it comes to billing. It's just continuous.
And gaps are expensive. Just a little bit here, a little bit there. You get 10 patients having a gap, you're into several $1,000s for the medical supply. And I mean, I don't know any medical supply that could not be helped out by having a few extra $1,000. So that's where it's kind of like, hey,
Right.
Don't gap yourself. In the winter, it just got cold here in central Washington. You don't leave your windows open. Same thing. You don't want to have a gap in the oxygen billing. And the nice thing for us, in the old days, we wouldn't work on this really, really hard. But with the help of the Offsite team, we have someone. This is all they do all day long. They're helping with this, and we've also saw a really strong increase in our supplemental sales. So in addition, with anything else oxygen-wise, anything else we should tell our listeners or those watching us on YouTube right now?
I would say that we have a very good team members who's working on documentation, like they're really focused on oxygen. So all they have to do is just call us, and we'll be more than happy to discuss. And our team members are really, they're very keen when it comes to details. as for documentation.
They are very, very good. And a lot of it also is the way we run our back end with the Offsite Team, they're not just going off. We're tracking the number of phone calls. We're tracking all the results in Brightree or their software. So they really want to prove that they are worth their time and money. So it's not like they're just collecting a paycheck. No, they're going to do the best to do whatever it is to raise our sales and those who have clients with Offsite Team, because hey, they want to please. So, well, good. Well, hey, if you are not billing for oxygen contents, or if you're not, already doing that, I encourage all of our people listening to us, please start doing this. If you say, Eric, I don't have the time to do that, that's totally fine. Give April and myself a call. I think we're down to one person right now who's currently ready to be placed, because what happens is we place our team members into other companies, and then we start training up other team members at our store. So when they come over to your team, they're ready to rock and roll. So, hey, April, what's our next next week? What are we talking about?
We're going to talk about rehab wheelchairs.
Rehab. Yes. Home assessments for wheelchairs, documentations. Yep. Can it be done virtually, non-virtual? What happens? It's one of those things. If it's done properly, our dealers can make a lot of money and take really good care of their patients. And if not, it can be a pain in the rear end. So anyway, until next time, hey, reach out to us, offsiteteam.com, or give us a call. April and I would love to talk to you. Okay, have a great day.